you know, in future conversations. Unfortunately, we're limited for time and things like that, but thank you so much. And yes, I did notice you didn't send me a bio. Okay, so I just want to make one request. I see some of the audience members, maybe one or two of them might have their microphones unmuted, so we can hear some, pots clanging in the kitchen there. If you don't mind, just check your microphones again and please mute them. Thank you very much. So we'll move on to Yavat Prabhu, a brief bio. And yes, thanks.
Hare Krishna, everyone. My name is Yavat Das. I'm a disciple of His Holiness Parthasarathi Das Goswami. And yeah, I'll try to share my experiences and realizations with you today regarding devotee relationships and interactions, and just really grateful for the opportunity to speak. And obviously, I wouldn't be able to say anything without the empowerment of all of you, my spiritual master, and my beloved better half here. So she can, I don't know, she should also introduce herself, actually. Go ahead.
Okay, Hare Krishna, everybody. My name is Radharasa Sudhanidhi Devidasi. I'm also a disciple of Parthasarathi Das Goswami. Yes, that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much for that very bashful bio from both of you. And then Balaram Prasad, if you don't mind.
Hare Krishna, everyone. I'm also, curiously enough, a disciple of Partha Maharaj, as is almost everyone else on this call. It's like a cosmic arrangement that Maharaj has brought us together. It definitely wasn't planned like this. So if anyone's thinking that, then you can stop doing that. I been recently trying to serve under Brajbasi Prabhu at the Santon Temple with these weekly Sunday sessions, and I think they're very interesting. So I'm excited for today's session. Thank you for having us.
All right, thank you so much, Balaram ji. I don't know if I should just maybe, sorry, I have things falling apart on my side here. I'm Bhima Das, also disciple of His Holiness Parthasarathi Das Goswami, and also privileged to be part of this this congregation of panelists and discussion on relationships. And again, we just want to thank those of you who have just joined us on the Zoom call. So yes, relationships, this is a topic that was given to us by Brajbasi Prabhu. It's basically a carryover from when Akura Prabhu was meant to do I think it was maybe a multi-parts presentation and seminar on this topic. This is being one of the topics, relationships. Now, it's a very intimidating kind of topic, in the sense that it's such a broad description that one might become, hesitant to want to say something on it. But of course, this such a topic is a very important one in Krishna consciousness in the context of Sadhu Sangha. As we know, Sadhu Sangha has been the theme in the last month and a half, 2 months in the ISKCON Stanton dialogues, and very much in keeping with that, it falls under the big umbrella of relationships. So everything in Krishna consciousness, the pastimes of the Lord, Krishna's pastimes, Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, the pastimes in the Mahabharata, the pastimes in Ramayana, so many different places, is all about relationships. So I've implored the devotees to speak and present something. And if you don't mind, we can start with Shiv Prabhu, if you're ready, who will present his personal realizations, his personal experiences, and also other things that he wants to share with us that he finds that are important in the topic of relationships. Thank you very much, Shiv Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Very well. Relationship, I think when Bhima Prabhu called me yesterday to request that I join and be part of this. I mentioned to him that it's interesting that 70% of all of our shastric, our weight of shastra, 70% of that is dedicated to Sambandha Gyan, which is knowledge of relationship with the divine, with Krishna. And I think that we have both a very lofty philosophy and then an also very simple philosophy. The philosophy is one of devotion and love, which is integral to all relationships, and seeing as Sambandha is the primary focus of so many of our acharyas' thoughts and conclusions from Vedanta. We also have a vested interest. We should have a vested interest in bettering all of our relationships in the interest of furthering our own bhakti. And with that being said, I want to narrow, I kind of wanted to focus on, because as you said, Bhima Prabhu, relationships are such a vast subject. It's something that can be never ending. The science of relationships, the meaning of relationships. And so what I'd like to focus on are two things that I feel are extremely important. And the first is just a word: sensitivity. I feel like sensitivity is the key that unlocks great relationships and the ability to relate to others in a non-facetious, loving way and with intention of service. And the other point, or the other conversation point that I'd like to bring up is communication. Communication is the way most of us relate to one another, and I think building up a healthy and spiritually charged way of communicating is fundamental to being a part of any community and being in relationship with Krishna. So with that being said, I'll start with sensitivity. Sensitivity is so important to me because, and I'll give you a little example. When reading Bhagavatam, I realized that there is so much focus on who is saying what to who, and the timing of when they say what to another person. And so himself in Bhagavad Gita mentions twice actually that one should endeavor to perform their own duty, it is better to perform one's own duty imperfectly than to perform another's perfectly. So this point about whether I'm the right person to say this thing to someone else, whether I'm the right person to be this mentor for this other person, whether I'm the right person to follow another person's these instructions, is very important. It comes into this point of sensitivity. And Narada Muni puts it incredibly simply and incredibly well when he's talking to Dhruva Maharaj. He's trying to talk this young boy out of his ambitions for a humongous kingdom, right? And his second instruction to Dhruva is, every man should act like this. When they meet a person who is more advanced than them, they should be very pleased. The mood should be one of wanting to render service. The mood should be one of respect. When someone meets someone who is less advanced than them, one should be compassionate. And when someone meets someone who is on the same level, a peer, they should seek friendship. And it takes a very self-aware person, a very humble person, to realize what category of person that we are meeting, that we are relating to, and therefore relate to them in the appropriate manner that is prescribed by such a great personality as Narada Muni, who Dhruva then describes as like the sun, because he's illuminating so many parts of the world and so many people. And And I have also found that in my own life, sorry, just 1 second, there's a plane passing by. Yeah. I've also found in my own life that we have such high standards for other people, but that we don't hold ourselves to sometimes. And being sensitive means understanding the needs of that person, understanding who that person is, and understanding if I'm the right person to speak to this person. It's all a very conscious. We see that we're conscious first, then, and one thing that I've reflected on my own life, I grew up with a few tendencies, and one of the tendencies I had was, so please go ahead, if the desire to be right. I think many people resonate with that point. I had many wonderful friends, so many wonderful. Sorry, I think I was lost for a second. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, Shiv. So we I think we missed the last minute or so of what you were saying. If you could just repeat that, please.
The point of sensitivity, and people that almost integral need to want to be right or seem to be right. And I think a lot of that, when I've studied male psychology, I've realized that that is a very male thing. It's the need to be seen to be doing the right thing, to prove myself to be right. And I think that in itself is one of the most insensitive approaches to being in a relationship or relating to another person. It disallows a loving connection. As we all know, jnana, which is knowledge, right, which can be connected to being right, falls as a servant to love in the grand scheme of things. And so I think one thing that I've really, and this will bring me into my communication point, one thing that I've really meditated on is forming practical techniques and practical ways in which I can, within the context of a conversation, within the context of an interaction with a person, in that moment, be able to check myself before saying something that is in pursuance of doing something, of clarifying what is right and what is wrong, and pushing that to one side, and in the pursuance of a more conducive, loving relationship. And that kind of brings me on to the communication side of things. I don't know if many of you, we have our six loving exchanges, but there in the secular world, there is a book by a man called Gary Chapman called The 5 Love Languages, and I feel like his basis is upon the 6 loving exchanges, but he's extrapolated it and made inferences from it that are so relevant to every one of our lives. And one of those is, one of his premises and one of his theses points are that we tend to try and communicate and give love in a way that we want to receive love, not in the way that person wants, not in the language that that person receives love. And I think this is a very philosophically grounded point, that even in our relationship with Krishna, so many times we are offering devotional service on our terms. So when it suits us, right? And I think if we can practice in our relationships the study of a person, the observance of a person and their needs and how they actually receive love, and cater towards that, not because we want anything from them, but simply so that they can understand that we love them and that we want to serve them in a special way, then that is directly applicable to our relationship with Krishna. And it's actually a very wonderful meditation and exercise to do when in the context of families, in the context of friendships. And I think those 5 love languages are, I'll just read them out to you so I don't miss them out. Words of affirmation, quality time, receiving and giving gifts, and acts of service, which will sound quite familiar to devotees because of the 6 loving exchanges. But I think healthy communication and healthy expression of love is something that I have seen and examined in so many different areas: my work, my family life, my relationship with devotees. I have seen that this miscommunication and this gap between the love we give because we want to receive that ourselves, and the gap and between that and what love that person needs is vast often. And so there are a few things there are a few techniques, and one of my techniques of remembering this is something that I've taken away from my days of physically training people. So when someone wants to give up on an exercise, I tell them to remember ABS, ABS. And the Yavet's smiling. ABS, it's an acronym. The first point is to appreciate. So in the context of a workout, I tell that person, appreciate the fact that you've come this far. So in the context of a conversation, appreciate this person, appreciate yourself, appreciate what you have in this relationship. The next point is breathe. Breathing, or the science of breathing, pranayama, is actually spoken throughout our Vedic texts, and it's one of these things that accompany every emotion that we have. So when we get angry, our breath quickens. When we are sad, our breath sometimes becomes really, really hard to grasp. When we're happy, again, the pulse quickens, the breath quickens. And so our breath is very related to our emotional reactions to things. So then controlling that breath brings you to a more mode of goodness place, and just breathing very deeply. And then the last thing is S. And with my clients, I'll tell them to learn to have a healthy self-dialogue. And this is the same thing that we need to have within ourselves. We need to question, what do we want from this relationship? Do I need to communicate that? Do I need to prove myself right in this point? And just having that short ABS is such a wonderful way of just not only becoming conscious of exactly what is being communicated, but also becoming refocused in your own intentions. And because I think as well, the famous saying is, the path to hell is paved with good intentions. As well intentioned as we can be in our relationships, we make mistakes. We become angry. And I think this ABS, appreciate the person, appreciate yourself, appreciate this relationship. B, breathe. And S, have that healthy self-dialogue so that you can progress in that conversation in a much more harmonious and devotee-like way. And yeah, so these two concepts are the concepts that I wanted to present today: sensitivity and just one aspect of communication.
It looks like Bhima Prabhu is not with us at the moment. Thank you so much for that, Shiv. It was beautiful, insightful. So many points to take away from that. I hope we can have a follow-up session where we unpack a little bit more of what you said and see how to practically apply these things in our daily lives. We need that. Now on to Yavid and Radharasa, who also have an ocean of wealth and experience that they can share with us about relationships.
Wow, I just wanted to say it's, I was enjoying listening to Shiv so much, I thought it's like, I didn't want him to stop speaking actually. It's just
You should have done the whole thing.
I was appreciating as,
I'm sure we'll have a mutual experience of that when you start speaking.
He said appreciate, and I was just appreciating, really. When he said ABS, I thought that's such a brilliant way because, being a car fanatic, I guess, so to speak, a Honda fanatic. He said ABS, which is kind of means stop reacting. ABS, which is kind of like stop, appreciate, stop, then appreciate. Yeah, wow, that is breathe and have that self-dialogue. It was really beautiful. Yeah, the interesting thing is Shiv also mentioned Bhima Prabhu, called him yesterday, and I can see why Bhima called me straight after he called you, and he was so enthusiastic. I can see why now, because you really were exploding with so much of wealth of knowledge on devotee relationships. I'm sure so many other aspects of human psychology as well. So I told him, the first thing I said to him was that Shiv is an untapped resource in our yatra because COVID has hid him away in isolation. We haven't used Shiv nicely, in the service of the devotees. But yeah, I wanted to share some points. Radharasa will share some points as well. She's been listening to some podcasts this week and the last week with different devotees who are basically who've been trained in counseling and mentorship. She was listening to Danya this week. It's the wife of Bali, one of our friends. Danya, a friend as well. Yeah, so she had so much of wisdom. I was eavesdropping on some of that podcast that she listened to probably twice, and I was thinking, this is incredible. We've got devotees our age who are so mature and intelligent, and have so much to share that can help us, just upskill the quality of our relationships. I wanted to speak about something really practical. I remember, or something that's very relatable to me, and that was just how devotee relationships are. It's the life of the devotee. Like Lord Chaitanya said, the Sankirtan movement is the life. The chanting of Hare Krishna is the life of the Sankirtan movement. So, I was thinking, for me, the only reason I'm still here is because of the devotees. The only reason I arrived here was because of the devotees. The only reason I'm still here is because of the devotees. And the only reason I'll make it back to the spiritual world is because of the devotees. I joined the society when I was about 16 years old, and I didn't join full time. And we were having this campus break. It was December time, and there were all these programs going on. We'd often go down to the coast, to Durban, during the December holidays. And there were all these programs going on at the Sri Sri Radharanath temple, and the devotees were doing kirtans, and there was a Rath Yatra. I don't know, I think it was in the North Coast somewhere happening. And then at New Year's Eve, there was this big Rath Yatra in Phoenix and a New Year's program. And I was just thinking, during that holiday time, I didn't have a vehicle. Me and my brother Halida, we didn't have a vehicle, and we were really wanting to be with the devotees. And we were not able to be with them all the time. We had to attend to so many family responsibilities and visit family and our cousins and spend time with them. And it was difficult, actually. Every day it was this hankering and this crying, Krishna, please, can I go to this program? Can I be with the devotees? Every day it was like that. And that just spilled over, when we'd see the devotees, my dad would take us to the Phoenix temple, to New Jagannath Puri for New Year's Eve, and it'd be like a whole 3 weeks culminating in, yes, go be with the devotees. And we'd be in this amazing kirtan, and we'd just lose ourselves. We'd dance like madmen, and we'd just hug the devotees, and we'd just be embracing each other, and just so blissful, taking prasadam together. Just, we'd be laughing hysterically, like at nothing sometimes. Even, it was a little intoxicating being in the association of devotees. And that spilled over into the next year. And, I always found that when I was with the devotees, spiritual life was so easy. So it was always something I was always hankering after. It gave fuel to my spiritual life. And when I was away from the devotees, it caused great pain. And therefore, if there's some, if anyone who knows me a little well knows that I struggle, obviously I've struggled during this COVID time because it's been hard to interact with the devotees. But it's tough, actually. It's tough to be away from the devotees. It's that same feeling, but it's almost like a hope against hope. Asa bandha, Rupa Goswami says, you're hoping against hope that you can be with the devotees again. So it really is something that sustains, that gave life and gives life to my Krishna consciousness. And sometimes, we can say, if we can take it for granted, when we had programs like 3-4 programs in a week, we'd be like, I'm so exhausted, I'm so tired. This devotee is not looking at me, this devotee is not greeting me, and we can become complacent. And I remember taking that question to one of my mentors, His Holiness Bhakti Brihad Bhagavat Swami. I asked him, I said, it's so difficult to be with devotees sometimes. Like it is, it's just a difficult relationship sometimes. But just a few years earlier, I couldn't live without them. But why am I feeling like this now? And he said, you have to think about it like a green mango. He said, a green mango, you can only relish it with a little bit of masala. There has to be some spicy taste. And it's not fully mature yet, but still you can relish it with a little bit of spice on it. But and he said that's like immature or not yet ripened devotee relationships, not yet fully developed and mature devotee relationships where you're not mature and others may not be mature as well. He said, but you can still relish it. But he said it might be a bit sour if you don't spice it correctly. And then he said, but if you give it some time and you tolerate, he used that word, you tolerate. My Guru Maharaj says this also, tolerate, cooperate. If you tolerate the green mango with the masala, then and that means tolerating yourself as well, the way you're reacting, the way you're interacting with devotees. Then the ripened mango comes. And then you get that feeling once again that, wow, I can't live without the devotees. And that's how I feel right now. I feel like, why was I so complacent? Every day that goes by, I'm praying, Krishna, let this wave crash into the rocks. This wave of COVID, let it crash and dissipate. And let's be together again, chanting and dancing and taking prasadam. So, really, I wanted to bring that point, how, this important point to me, that Vaishnava association, being with devotees, it really sustains us. It's our life. And Srila Prabhupada says somewhere in the Srimad Bhagavatam, I forget which purport it is, but His Holiness Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj mentioned it in the class just prior to the COVID lockdown. He said that Srila Prabhupada created this movement. Srila Prabhupada mentions that he created this society specifically to allow the devotees, to allow the people who are practicing Krishna consciousness to have a collective association, to be together. And he says that also in the 7 purposes of ISKCON, which I mentioned before on one of the dialogues as well. 3 of those principles are speaking about bringing the members closer together. So yeah, I think that's one big point that I wanted to mention. Maybe I'll hand over to Radharasa to say something as well.
Hi, Krishna, everybody. So, Bhima Prabhu kind of low-key, possibly bombarded me with this. He was like, you have to speak. I mean, devotee relationships are essential. It's the second stage of devotional service. You know, you have to have faith and you need to have sadhu sangha. So, you know, sometimes you may think, oh, you know, things are just too hard. I don't want to associate with devotees. And you can definitely still, you know, make a lot of progress with chanting and reading and engaging in devotional service on your own. But the reason sadhu sangha is there as the second, you know, level of devotional service is because it is so important. And sadhu sangha is something that remains consistent throughout all the levels of devotional service, whether you are, you know, a new devotee or an extremely senior devotee. And you see this even, you know, I've seen some very sweet exchanges between some very senior Prabhupada disciples who are on such a high level of bhakti, you know, their Krishna consciousness is just, you know, it's so high, yet you look at them getting so excited when they see their god brother or they see another devotee that they've known for many years. And, you know, that's an indication of how we should be acting as well. We should always be waiting and excited to be in the association of devotees. So, you know, sadhu sangha is just always important. And obviously it is harder now in COVID and things, but still we should strive to associate with everybody as much as we can, as much as is safe now. I was thinking about, you know, there's so many factors to import things that can make a devotee relationship better and easier to, you know, just be in. And one of the things that, you know, rings true for me, I would say, as of the last few years, something that's been big for me has been the aspect of honesty. And that's honesty between, you know, devotees, but also to yourself. It's really important to be honest to yourself, to know where are you on your spiritual path, in your physical, emotional well-being, where are you as a person, you know, and also being honest with others about that, because then everybody around you can understand who you are better. Because ultimately we all in this material world, you know, nobody's perfect. We all have imperfect senses. We are all making mistakes all the time. And, you know, to be honest with oneself about where you are in whatever aspect it may be, spiritual life, emotional, your emotional well-being, your, you know, it could even be physical well-being, you know, financial well-being. You need to be honest with yourself first, and then you need to inquire and get guidance from those who you really, really, you know, have confidence in, and get help. You know, like, don't ever feel like you're alone. That honesty to yourself is so important, because you may think that, you know, you're good to go, everything's bright and dandy, and the path of Krishna consciousness it's beautiful and it's amazing. But there are also times where you know, not the path, but you may be stumbling a little bit, and you need to be able to be honest with yourself and with others. And not everybody, you don't need to go to a Sunday program and announce to everybody what your issues are, but you have those confidants, those few people who you trust and who trust you, where the trust is mutual, and you share that. Whatever problems you may be having, whatever you're struggling with, share that with them, and share that with people who, you know, like your friends, but also share it with seniors who you may have faith in, who can give you guidance and things like that. But, you know, to be able to do that, the honesty needs to be there. You need to be able to be honest with yourself, and you need to be able to be honest with others about what's happening in your life. And that can open up so many pathways of your relationship with somebody. Like I've had like a lot of friends, but I look at the ones who I've had, you know, drama with, and those ones are the closest ones to me. You know, so it's or the friends who I've had, you know, where we've had to really, like, you know, unfortunately get a little bit sort of like, it gets a little dirty. Yeah, you know, it's not a good place. But from that, it becomes so beautiful and so much deeper. You have to get your hands dirty to dig a hole, you know. It's necessary, but honesty is required for that. But I mean, along with that, I think an important point that Shiv Prabhu made, which was the sensitivity. You also need to be sensitive when you are being honest with somebody else about their shortcomings that you may be seeing. And like he was saying as well, like there's a time and place, there's a situation, there's a way that you can do it. And with that honesty also needs to come compassion and empathy. Because like I said, we are all making mistakes. We are all struggling in this material world. I mean, that's why we are here and not in Goloka Vrindavan, I guess. But we need to have compassion and empathy for those who may be struggling. And so if somebody approaches you and asks you for help or for guidance, or just wants to reveal their heart in confidence to you, then you need to treat that person, you know, with compassion and with empathy, and try to understand what they're going through, and yeah, be there for them. And I think that you know goes hand in hand, you know, the honesty and the compassion. You have to have them hand in hand, and really try to, you have to internalize and introspect to figure out what is important to you in a relationship, and be honest with those who you do value, you know. And you're not going to be best friends or the closest with like everybody in the temple, for example, although everybody is always respected because everyone is Vaishnavas. But you find those few people, and you care for them, and you take care of each other. And in that way, you'll never really feel alone if you are ever going through anything. So yes, that was my little ramble of random things. I don't know, Yavat, if you have anything else to say.
I think let's go back to Bhima so you can.
All right, thank you so much, devotees, for making your presentations. Unfortunately, for a few minutes I got disconnected, so I was just trying to catch up on what Shiv Prabhu was saying. So I was chatting with him. And Yavat, I sent you a message also. If you could just tell me basically those 3 points that you covered, and then we can use that as a platform to open up discussions in a minute or two. But it's now 13 minutes to 4. What's the maximum time limit do we have? Until maybe 4:10?
I'd say, yeah, 4:15. We have half an hour or so.
Okay.
Just under half an hour.
Okay, great. So then I'd like, if you're ready, if you'd like to make your presentation on the points that you've set aside in your heart to discuss with us. And after that, if there's anybody else who's on this Zoom call, I see some very long-standing personalities that we know for many years, devotees and otherwise. If they want to contribute something, they could maybe just chat
on the chat group to everybody, and we can pick that up from there if you want to contribute something after Balaram. So Balaram, thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity, Bhima Prabhu. We've had some really nice conversations from the beginning of the week around this this topic, planning it, and one of the main themes that we wanted to focus on around this discussion was healthy connections. And I asked myself, what does it mean to have health in a relationship? I thought the two important aspects for me when it comes to health is flexibility and strength. So I wanted to focus on those 2 points. My points are not as long or big as everyone else's that they've shared. So I'll keep mine short and sweet, and hopefully have more of a back and forth discussion around it. Excuse me. But flexibility and strength, I see it as when two people have to connect to build a relationship, because everyone is inherently different. You need to allow yourself some type of influence from the other person, as much as you want to be close to that person. So the closer you get, the more you need to allow yourself to be able to be influenced by that person in order to get to know them and for them to get to know you. And I think by doing that, by two people doing that and becoming a bit flexible in terms of who they are, not in changing who they really are and changing their inherent nature, but I guess expanding past their comfort zone in a sense. And by doing that, I think two people, whether it's husband and wife, whether it's friends, like that, they can grow and they can get to know each other a lot better. And I think also the next part around strength is just to add positive vibes, if that's an appropriate word to use, into that space. Being there for the person when they need it. If they're going through a tough time, say that you see this person's going through a tough time, so that they know that they're being noticed, and lend encouraging words, and non-judgmental ears, like that. So I think these two aspects of flexibility and strength, when we're thinking of wanting to build a relationship in good health, one that can withstand difficult times, one that can grow and flourish in good times as well. These two things are very important. So yeah, I just like to leave it there. And I think that if as individuals we take the responsibility to find the tools that will allow ourselves to bring out the best in ourselves, and then we'll want to do the same for those that are in our lives. So if we don't take that first step of saying, if I have a relationship with someone that's not so good, what am I doing to make it better? So I think, and obviously these questions that we ask ourselves will change over time, because as we grow up, we see ourselves differently. We may mature and become more self-aware around these things. And especially while we're practicing Krishna consciousness, our consciousness may evolve and purify. And as that happens, we begin to see the world, we begin to see those close to us in a different way, So it's not that no one's allowed to change. If I've received an answer for a difficult question today, I should expect that with flexibility that answer can change over time. So that's where flexibility can help us in being pliable to the world around us, to the ever-changing world around us, so that we can always stay in contact. We can always be in that unseverable connection to the devotees and to Krishna. Thank you, Bhima Prabhu. Very well.
Hare Krishna. So I believe you've finished your presentation.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm not sure if there was a delay on my side or on your side.
No, it's me somehow or the other. Thank you, Balaram. I just want to invite, if there's anybody else that's in the audience that has thought of maybe contributing something, we can allow maybe 2-3 minutes. I see Ujwala Prem is also here. Haladar is also here. Vasudev and Devaki. Bhakta, I think Vinay and Simone and Tulsi. So if you'd like to maybe contribute on something or pick up on something that one of our speakers has presented on that you find important, that maybe you want to just expand on. Is there anybody, any takers? Okay, but if there is anybody, you could please put that in the chat group and one of us will pick it up. So maybe if time allows, Balaram, I could maybe just go on to present something very briefly that I've been contemplating in the last couple of days, if that's okay.
Yes, please.
All right. So, she probably launched us into, philosophy and pastimes and comparing it to, relationships within Krishna's, I would say, like within Krishna's pastimes, especially the one point where he mentions that we should be sensitive to those we are in relationships with, and also engage in those relationships on their terms, on Krishna's terms, something that would please Krishna. So I have a phrase for that. We should always keep Krishna's agenda in mind. And I thought that was very sweet. Also, being sensitive to the other person's needs is very important, because otherwise it's very much a lopsided type of relationship. So anyway, enough about that for now. We'll have a good chance to get into the different points just in a minute or two. And Balaram, just flag me if it's getting, if time is running out too quick. So the two things I basically want to cover is something that Balaram mentioned I don't know if it was in passing or if it was one of his main points, was influence in relationships. Now we find that in relationships, it's easy to influence somebody else with our own agenda. Now to borrow from what Chief Prabhu has been presenting also and discussing. Influence, from my experience and from my mistakes in relationships, has shown me that influence should always be done with honesty and integrity, meaning that there should be some sort of spiritual grounding to the way we influence anybody, whether a devotee, whether somebody who's a spiritualist or non-spiritualist, anybody that we might have a relationship with. And that relationship could be a fleeting relationship, because Bhakti Tirtha Swami speaks about relationships of a fleeting nature, meaning you may encounter somebody, going, through your life very briefly, maybe at a gathering, maybe at who knows, we go to work, well, in the past, seems like it's history now. we used to go to, conferences, meetings, and events, and you, as a devotee, you meet people, and somehow or the other, there's a need to have a positive impact, like Balaram mentioned, positive vibes, colloquially, vibes, positive energy, positive impact. And Bhakti Tirtha Swami says that we should act in such a way that we make a very indelible type of impact or influence upon that person, because the truth is we will not see that person again. So, and we should treat, and he even goes on to say in somewhere that I've read, that we should treat those interactions as if we will never see that person again. So imagine, having a positive influence on somebody with honesty and integrity, with the spiritual intent. That becomes quite a serious matter. So, and that obviously strips away our own personal agenda from the entire equation, because every relationship you'll find in the material existence, really, even amongst the animal species who are acting automatically, they are influencing or having a relationship based on their personal needs. There used to be Americans saying, and I thought it was just American phenomenon, what can you do for me? But then I find after so many years, when your eyes kind of like become anointed or awakened to the torchlight of knowledge, then you find that, well, actually most relationships are like this. I'm interacting with somebody and influencing them in such a way, or manipulating in such a way, that I want to extract some benefit or some advantage. And that's something we should catch ourselves doing. So influence in that regard has a very sinister agenda. It's incentivized. You'll find that activities amongst human beings and spiritualists alike, we have this basic human nature where we want to take advantage, even on a subconscious level. So then it's incumbent upon us as aspiring spiritualists and devotees that we should be mindful of the way we interact and the way we influence and the way we become influenced. So one prime example, what I've been reading in the last 2 days, is Ramayana. And I think I got to about 8 chapters in the last 2 days by some, causeless mercy. And the very, very beginning of Ramayana, you'll find that Kaikeyi, I believe, Radharasa, maybe one of your hamsters was named Kaikeyi, was it? Or Kaushalya. Yeah, so Kaikeyi is she's considered to be the favorite princess or the queen of Dasarath. He had a very, very warm, space in his heart for her. So every evening he used to go and spend, quality time with her. And she became known as maybe his favorite queen in that sense. Very, very, very sophisticated, very highly cultured personality, lady, the epitome of being a lady. Soft-hearted, gentle, of pure thought, all those wonderful qualities that one would find in a true lady was existent within Kaikeyi's character and personality. However, when it came to the time of Ram's coronation, and Ram was, he was below 20 years old at that time. He had just turned into, a powerful man. He had come back from his escapade with Vishwamrita, because Vishwamrita came and kidnapped him for about 10 days from Dasarath and took him into the forest. And there's so many beautiful pastimes that occur there. So when he came back, then some time after that, it was due for him to be crowned as Prince Regent. But when that happened, there's this personality, a hunchback personality, Mantara. And she was the assistant of Kaikeyi, a principal assistant of Kaikeyi, who became very disturbed by this. And then she developed this sinister agenda within her mind to influence Kaikeyi to stop this coronation of Ramachandra. And why? It's because she had a huge incentive in doing this, and it was a personal incentive. It was a personal agenda. So this is just to elucidate that that we should be mindful of not pushing our own agenda upon other people within relationships. And I mean even the closest, especially the closest people to us. So Mantara went on this really, really complicated, intricate mission of influencing this most amazing personality, Kaikeyi, into becoming, within a very short space of time, within one interaction, into becoming a very sinister person. So this is amazing. It's amazing because you have such a high caliber human being being turned into such, the word is actually evil. And why I say evil is because at some point when Lakshman realized that this had happened, he immediately told Ram he wants to go and kill Kaikeyi. This is how severe the situation became in such a short time. That from a divine, most pleasing lady and queen, that she had become somebody who was seen as an enemy by Lakshman. So, and all because of the pivotal character, Mantara. Mantara was very concerned that she had, she's hunchbacked, and then she's always the butt of the jokes of the society and the community, and she's looked down upon, and she's only enjoying her position because of being a close servant of Kaikeyi. So she wanted to protect her own interests. So we should be very careful of this now. Very careful that we should not be only thinking about our own interests. Very much like Shiv Prabhu was talking about, we should be thinking and being sensitive about the other person. And that's a bit of a difficult thing to do, because we're always moving with our own personal agenda, and driven by our own incentives. And that's a very asuric quality. So that's influence, and how it can become so toxic in a very short order of time. In one interaction, we could turn a relationship or a friendship or a marriage even into something that becomes explosively toxic. So that's one thing I want to get across there. And I'm speaking about things that I really need to work on, right? So the next thing I want to speak about that came up in these chapters is attachment. Attachment, relationships need some sort of attachment to work. Because if there's detachment, then where is the relationship? If there's a disconnect, detachment, taken to its fullest extent, means a disconnection, right? If I detach, and suddenly there's no connection, there's no current going through, and there's no relation, there's no meaning to relationship then. So we should be careful not to become too detached in relationships, because sometimes we misconstrue the philosophy that we should become detached, we should become renounced. But actually, Prabhupada gives the example, or the Shastras give this example of monkey renunciation. The monkey is so renounced, but he has so many girlfriends, hopping from one branch to another, and he's engaging in activities and hopping to another one. And as he's going to the next one, he's renouncing the previous one. Is that renunciation? No, that's wholehearted sense gratification in the name of renunciation. So we may think, we can just reject a devotee relationship, or just not just a devotee, but any friendship, without giving due consideration to the other person's feelings and sensitivity. So attachment is demonstrated in its most intense form between Dasarat and Ramachandra. King Dasarat is extremely amazing personality. If you go into his personality, he's not just a king just crying, all the time for Ram's love, or for his, separation from Ram. He's an extremely powerful personality. And he has an amazing history, but yet he was so attached to Ramachandra. He was so attached to his queens. He was so attached to the point that it actually literally broke his heart. And that's how he passed on, shortly after Ramachandra was put into exile. So this attachment, in my opinion, in my experience, is also important to have a quality relationship. You'll find that we become more and more impersonal. In this generation, people are very attached to, LCD screens, social media activities, so many things that are two-dimensional. Yet there's a three-dimensional wife, there's a three-dimensional child, there's a three-dimensional dog that is in the family that requires that requires attention, that requires care, and requires affection. So, attachment is important. If we don't have that attachment, that means maybe we don't have the love. So attachment is not a bad thing in a genuine relationship. It is essential. It is essential. We should develop some attachment. And the only way attachment I've experienced that is nourished is when we can only see the good in somebody. Yes, all of us have so many unmentionable anattas and unmentionable qualities. But if we put that aside and we look for the good things in a person, then we can develop some attachment to that. And that not to forget that we should be looking at ourselves to look at our anattas and our shortcomings and our unmentionable qualities. Just take a peek in the mirror, and look at ourselves introspectively. Because there's somebody out there that I have a relationship, half a dozen, or maybe more people, and those that are very close to us, family members, they have to put up with me. Hello. Did we ever think about that? People have to put up with me. So I have to self-audit all the time. So attachment comes from looking at the good qualities of others. So those are the two things I'd like to just put out there. And I'd stop now and invite anybody from the panel to comment on whatever each other has said that has struck a chord with you, or struck a note with you, or struck some sort of rag within you that inspires you to say something. So thank you very much. Anybody can go first. And even if, as I said, I implore the audience, if they want to just come in and contribute a comment, it'll be very much appreciated. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thanks.
Sorry, I know I'm infamous for saying things, but it's so wonderful listening to all of you share. And it just brings up so many things in my mind, so many lessons I've learned the easy way and the hard way. And as Balaram was speaking, I was thinking, when he was speaking about positive vibes, and I was thinking, you spoke about Ramayan, and we were discussing about how Ramayan has so many wonderful stories. And something that's just rung true in my head for the last year, at least, is in all relationships to listen first, speak later. It's a powerful tool, actually, and that's why Shravanam is preceding Kirtanam also in a general sense. But there's that story in Ramayan when Vibhishan went to Ravana and he said, "Send back Sita. You're doing the wrong thing, Ravan. You're my brother and I care about your best interest." He didn't care about his interest. He was saying, "I care about your interest." Similar to what you were saying, Bhima Prabhu. But Ravan was just intoxicated. He was in complete illusion, and he said, "Get out of my kingdom." And Vibhishan took 4 of his most confidential associates, and he journeyed for the shore where the ocean, the beach, basically, where Ram was getting ready to go over to Lanka, where they were constructing the bridge. And Vibhishan was arriving there, and Sugriva pointed at him and these 4 personalities and said, "Kill them. It's the enemy." And the monkeys are getting arms ready. They're getting clubs and stones. They were going to hurl stones at them as they were flying over the ocean in their Viman. And Lord Ram said, "Wait." He said, "First, let's listen to what he has to say." And that's such a brilliant example for me of listen first, speak later. Because they could have killed Vibhishan, but it's because of Vibhishan, technically, that they won that war, because he gave the secrets about Ravan, how to kill him, how to approach Lanka, which were the weak points of Lanka. So we can conquer illusion, which is what Lanka represents, if we listen first to the Vaishnavas and then speak later.
Recording in progress.
I just wanted to share that. I thought it was something that, especially when Balaram and Bhima Prabhu, when you were speaking, is something that I just thought of, and I definitely wanted to say it because it's something that I've tried to do better in the last 12 months.
Thank you so much, Yap. Sorry. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just switching between devices there.
Uh, Chief Prabhu, do you want to comment on something that has been discussed amongst all these different panelists, or do you want to add something to this as this conversation is developing?
No, I just put in the comments, were there any questions from Facebook? I think one thing that came to mind when you were speaking, Bhima Prabhu, is there's always verses within our Bhagavad Gita, and there are always little nuances that are very interesting. And one of these such nuances that I find extremely interesting is that in chapter 16 of Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna is elucidating divine and demoniac tendencies and qualities and natures. In the fourth verse, he's listing Sampadam Asurim. He's saying there are so many different qualities that are demoniac, and amongst them, and I think it's the second to last one, he says the Sanskrit word is parushyam, and this means harshness. Now, when I think about demoniac qualities, I never ever think of that. That never comes to my mind. It's lust, envy, pride. You know the rest. Everyone can list these off. But harshness, parushyam, and Prabhupada goes into this in the purport, where he talks about how when we are unnecessarily harsh, it is an anathema to that person's even existence. So the reason why it's demoniac is because it is almost a curse on the person when we are harsh to them. And so so when you were speaking, Bhima Prabhu, this verse came into mind because when we respond out of harshness, we are literally not allowing that person to have the respect of being a living entity. And Prabhupada elucidates that. So this is something that, I mean, I've been harsh even yesterday. and so I think this is something that it has such gravity and such weight to it that we should be more conscious about being harsh in the moments before being harsh. Yeah, that was my thoughts.
Thank you so much for that contribution. Balaram Prabhu, is there something that you want to add? I think you said we have like 5 minutes left.
No, not right now. I think I have a lot to think about based on what was said, and I hope that in our follow-up session, when it's planned, we can pick up these points, like being more conscious of the demoniac qualities that we have when we interact with others, and listening more carefully, listening with a caring heart, and not listening to respond like that. So I think they're really good points that we can take away. So let's do that. Let's make a note of the ones that have struck a chord, or as you said, struck a rag, Bhima Prabhu, and let it just sit in this source of realization. And hopefully when we meet again in the next part of the series, we can bring them up to light again.
So, Balaram, do I have 2 minutes to just recap the key points that each speaker mentioned? Is it possible?
Course. Yes,
okay.
Please.
Just raise your hand if we're going to be cut off, abruptly or something like that. But I mean, I'd love to do a summary of the key points, meaning I'm just going to mention each key point that the speakers have presented to us. And catch me if I'm wrong, any of you. Chief Prabhu started off the discussion about, and his points, strong points that he wanted to impress upon us was sensitivity. The other point he mentioned was communication. And one of the things he shared with me on the chat was engaging in relationships are sensitive to the other person's needs, and also on the terms, on the T's and C's, the fine print in the contract. on the terms and conditions of that particular person, and also considering whether it pleases Krishna. I thought that was absolutely beautiful. Thank you, Shri Prabhu, for that. Yavat Prabhu went on to speak about how, let me go back to the chat here, Yavat. Let me see if it's still in my history. It might not be. But Yavat, you can actually correct me. But you spoke about the essentialness of devotee association and how that we need it all the time, in essence. I did get disconnected there, I must admit. Not disconnected in mind, but actually my internet connectivity. And what came across to me from one or two of the points you mentioned was the value of relationships and association to our own personal Krishna consciousness. If you just want to add one or two things there, Yavat, that I could have missed that you said.
No, that sounds good, Bhima Prabhu. That was just basically how these relationships are life. They sustain us. The backbone of our practice. Yeah.
Right. And you mentioned how difficult it was with being without relationships and devotee association. The other thing you mentioned about is like in these relationships, you mentioned about chanting that binds us together. You mentioned about dancing that binds us together, and you mentioned prasad that binds us together. And as much as we can try to avoid discussing these things in devotee relationships, I see that it must, and it always seems to come up. So there's no way that you can have quality relationships without this. Radha Rasa, thank you so much for contributing and sharing. You spoke, one of the last points you mentioned was empathy and compassion in dealing with each other. And that stemmed from honesty with other devotees, with other people that you have a relationship. And also you emphasized self-honesty, which is also very key. And I found, I can relate to that because when in my naive years, I felt like, oh, I'm doing okay in Krishna consciousness and let me just, ebb and flow along. I found that it wasn't a very quality experience. But when I started to admit, especially to myself, the frailties that I have, the shortcomings that I have, and especially to the deity, because the deity has become my psychologist, really. I tell him the worst things and he doesn't even bat an eyelid. He doesn't even judge me, So I find that very therapeutic and very essential in my Krishna consciousness, being honest, at least to Krishna, and of course my wife. You also spoke about the high level of association between senior devotees, god brothers, god sisters, who haven't seen each other, or who have relationships for many years, and maybe even possibly haven't seen each other for a long time. And you've seen those interactions, and it has impressed upon you that we should learn from this high level, high quality associating from senior and more experienced devotees. Love that one. And Balaram spoke about two things under the topic of healthy relationships. And the two things he spoke about almost sounded like, when I used to go to the gym in those days, was flexibility and strength. Now it's how we should, adjust and adapt within relationships. And the strength bits, I did get disconnected there, Balaram. And you also mentioned influence, which concurred with what I said. But strength, I don't know if you were just going to recap that for a second.
What I was trying to get across with strength was just to reinforce the good in the other person that we're trying to connect to, so that there's that encouragement and they feel that there's a sense of value that's in the connection. So it doesn't mean necessarily material strength or any resource-based strength, money or property or assets like that, but it's that emotional, psychological, and spiritual strength that we offer as a person to the next party, to the next person, whether it's our significant other or friends or family.
So thank you. With that, if you don't mind, Balaram, since you're on the mic again, still on the mic, if you don't mind, maybe just wrapping it up, because I think we're probably out of time by now.
We are out of time, but I beg forgiveness from Vrajbasi Prabhu for us going out of time, but I think it was a really nice session. And yeah, I would just like to thank all of the panelists for taking an hour and a half out of their week to spend with us and share what's on their minds and share all of their wisdom with us. And I hope that everyone on Zoom and Facebook enjoyed this hour and a half. So I hope if there's any questions, please feel free to post them on the Facebook group, or you can message any one of us, Raj Pasi Prabhu, Bhima Prabhu. And we will see you soon for a follow-up session. Until then, please be safe, because we want to see all of you when the wave crashes. We don't want the wave to take one of our loved ones. So by you being safe, it ensures that we get to see each other and embrace each other when this is over. So thank you once again. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, everybody. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Bhima Prabhu, thank you for facilitating so nicely.